something like money?
Welcome to another episode of Practice Prosperity. We are joined by Anthonia Berry. We're going to go into discussion about law, specifically about different law practices. Does size really matter? But what I'm interested in is if you're a practicing lawyer, what are some steps you can take to actually grow your career, be able to gain clients for yourself, and potentially make that, highly coveted partner track. So I hope you guys will listen. This is going to be a fun episode. So welcome with joining us. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
If you don't mind, can you please introduce yourself, your practice, and the type of clients that you serve?
Absolutely. So my name is Anthonia Berry. I am the CEO and also a law firm business developer at Strategy Academy. This is an agency that I founded to serve attorneys. In our agency, we work with attorneys to grow and expand their practice. And then we also created a cut out and carved out area for us to work with attorneys that are launching their own law practice. So as you can hear from all that I've said before, we are in the market of serving attorneys, strictly attorneys, helping them to grow and expand their practices.
I love it. I love it. In your area of legal and law, is similar to the dentists, similar to financial planners. There's something called private equity coming in, purchasing firms, consolidating them. What are you seeing in the law landscape as far as what private equity is doing?
So what I'm seeing now that private equity is playing a role in the law space is a lot of attorneys are feeling the need to be more competitive. And whether that means going out and looking for other practices that they perhaps can acquire or other practices that they can merge with, that's becoming a hot topic. And it's becoming more and more frequent that the possibilities of it are at the top of the business development list and agenda to discuss. And the reason for that is because, of course, the more attorneys you have, the more locations that you have, meaning in the United States, the different states of which you are present, the stronger you are as a law practice and the stronger you appear to be as a law practice to the clients that would be reaching out to you for legal advice. For example, if you are considered after a merger or after some kind of acquisition to be no longer a mid-sized firm, but instead a large firm, that allows you this opportunity to attract larger matters, which means that your revenue is then impacted tremendously by your ability to now serve clients that are of a larger size and have a much deeper budget to cover legal fees for a larger firm. So what we're seeing in the business development space as these private equity deals are coming in and allowing individuals who are making up the private equity pool to not be attorneys, but be able to acquire law practices. We're seeing this expansion of firms that are coming because of these proposed and planned mergers and acquisitions that are coming onto the landscape at this time.
So one of the questions I have, so all these law firms are merging, private equity comes in. Do firms actually get stronger as they become larger in this law environment?
And that's a bit of a loaded question, because just because you have more heads, that does not mean that you are necessarily stronger. Strength in terms of a law practice are more so measured on the relationships that exist that will allow you to attract the type of matters that you want. That's typically what strength looks like and what's used to measure what success looks like and also measure how strong you are in the market. So that's a major playing factor. But second to that is also going to be the equity in your brand. If you are a law practice that you've been around for some time, however, you've not really done any marketing to really raise your profile, whether you are the firm being acquired or you're the firm that's acquiring another firm, is going to determine your strength as well. If you're one of those firms where you've covered great deal of ground, and you're known, you have something to build upon. However, if you're one of those firms that did not believe in marketing, did not believe in branding, you're probably not going to come out of the gate strong, and you're going to have much of a steeper hill to go up to get to that place of being regarded as stronger and having strength. So this is where marketing comes into play, and where you start to see it rear its head, and attorneys start to then realize that, hey, there is value in marketing, even if I didn't see it before, because now they're not seeing the revenue being reflected as quickly as they would want it to be, or they expected it to be. So that's when we start seeing this shift of, we need to build up strength. We need to build up a reputation. We need to build up the amount of people who know us, the amount of industries and states that we're in, and that we have a presence in. So I would say that, yes, strength, can be a little bit reflected by headcount, but that branding and marketing piece trumps all of that.
Let's talk about the mentality of a firm, a successful firm that hasn't put any money into marketing. Like, how does that happen? How does a firm grow to a certain size, become successful, and neglect marketing completely?
So before we even get there, let's unpack what it's actually called that has happened, that has caused the growth to happen. The growth that they have seen is actually business development that has caused that growth to happen. And that's intentional business development, meaning that there's a referral base, there's an ecosystem that's built around that firm that just allows continual business to flow to that firm. In addition to that, or within that, I should say, there's another thing called a referral ecosystem that's also then wrapped around that, because what tends to happen is, when there's an existing relationship, and then there's this, business development of them just being tightly knit, they refer and then refer. And then you get what I like to call like a spider web effect that starts to happen, because they are a friend of a friend. And then you get a referral that way. And it can go to the second, third, and fourth, fifth degree, and all the way out, where you're a part of this ecosystem. And once you become a part of it, where people are referring to you, just by default, the business just starts to grow. So in the absence of marketing, where they have not done marketing, but the firm has grown, their relationships, essentially, that's what's holding up the bottom of that basket of keeping that firm in business. Now, I have no reservations in saying that that's a bad thing, because I think that's an excellent thing. And that's something that I advise my clients to do. However, parallel to that needs to be marketing, and there needs to be branding, because there's going to be a time when somebody that you don't know personally, or the firm has grown to a size where, there's not that first, second, and third, and fourth degree. But then you get somebody who's a little bit more sophisticated that wants to know more about you, and they start measuring your abilities by what your marketing has done or has not done. So that's why the two are typically put together, because they work hand in hand with each other. And yes, like I said, I advise my clients that you have to have a strong business development side of your business, but you also have to have marketing coupled with it as well to see the real, true, and long-term success.
I love that you separated business development from marketing. So some people call it sales for marketing. A lot of people put those two together. Just because I market does not mean a client is closed and on the books and producing revenue for me. There are two different skill sets and different things. How does one gain those, let's call those client development skills? Like, how do you do that? And should that be the top priority before I think about the color of my website, the words that I put out there on a brochure? Like, where's the priority to make a sustainable business?
Yeah. So I agree that the marketing and all of what we call the fancy stuff of putting a logo and selecting a color palette and stuff, that's secondary to the business development side, because without the business development side, you don't have clients. You have no foundation in place for which you are going to be able to send a bill to keep the lights on, to contribute to the continual marketing. So before you even get to the point where you're building out logos and all of that other stuff, a relationship that's going to be ongoing is way more valuable than you building out a logo and branding and picking out color palettes. Yes, those things are important. However, before you get there, we have to talk about what is going to keep the business rolling. Do we have a client that's going to allow us to generate revenue on an ongoing basis? Do we have a way to generate additional clients? That is, again, more business development. And on the back of all of that, can we get referrals from these existing sources? All of that needs to kind of come into play and be at least on the surface for you to even think about thinking, oh, well, I want my logo to look like this, or I want my branding and marketing to include that. And to be honest with you, I do see lots and lots of law practices get really excited and started on that creative piece. They start building out the branding and the logo and all of the jazzy stuff. And then they don't have any clients to then generate the revenue to keep the logo on the wall. So the start is the business development. Now, building a business plan, although, most people think, oh, that's so basic and that's not needed. It is needed, because you need to have everything that you plan to do laid out somewhere where you can read it, reread it, provide it to other members of your team that are going to be joining you, and everybody's reading off of the same song sheet. And also to remind you of what you said that you're going to do and hold yourself accountable. So that's a part of the business development activities as well that needs to happen at a really early stage. Now, once you're done doing that and you feel like you're in a good place to be able to generate revenue, and you're sure about what you want to do, yes, by all means, let's move on to creating logos, selecting color palettes, and deciding what messaging we want to see come through in the creative pieces that make up the law practice.
Yeah, on my end, what I see is a website, a logo, and color palette. That's something that the business owner can control. Mm-hmm. Relationships, you can't control. They're messy. There's disappointments. Mm-hmm. There's not met expectations. How do you suggest somebody deal with those things? Because in this day and age with social media, I'm so used to being on my phone. Managing relationships is a skill set that it seems like it's losing among the younger generation.
Mm-hmm. It is. And that is an accurate observation, because what is happening and continues to happen is that the relationships that are digital have somehow become reality to some people, right? They're not really understanding that those connections that you have online are not necessarily going to be the ones that are going to generate real, true business for you. So if you can have a line of separation of knowing that, yes, the people that you know personally can also be on your digital social platforms and pages, but your real, true relationships are the ones that you actually like physically go meet those people, whether it's going to be for lunch, coffee, meetings, whatever that looks like. It could even be a virtual meeting, but you're actually having a two-way conversation with that is live. Those are the relationships that you need to be fostering and really, getting those to be more and more mature and healthy than the ones that you're fostering online, because those are really not the relationships that you need to grow and sustain a business. Now, there's a time and place for social media. Yes, that we live in a digital age right now where your social presence validates and confirms that, like I said, you have a heartbeat and you're real. But you still have to have these relationships with actual humans, human to human interaction, in order for you to have revenue sources that are actual people that make decisions.
Because we can't eat off likes and followers. That's just the main point. I think that's so important. Me going into the space, doubling down on my niche, I learned that a lot of things are still localized in the sense of when you have your license to practice law, it's usually in the state of Georgia. When you have your license to be a therapist, it's in the state of Georgia. When you're a dentist, it's confined within the state. So most business is usually going to happen between individuals within your same state, given your niche and specialty. So it's important to the people around you can actually reach and touch. Those are going to be what really drives revenue.
Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely correct. As much as we are digital and we are living in the cloud, we still somehow, some way understand that human to human interaction is what is necessary. So even though we are not so quick to admit that, deep down, we know that. Like the pandemic, I think, taught all of us that.
Yeah.
That separation or having to keep distance didn't feel good. And it made things so much more difficult. So while I could have a conversation with somebody online and it was virtual, it was never the same as meeting that person and, face to face. So those really challenging times helped us to understand the real dynamic that happens when you meet somebody face to face, and also reconfirmed that there is a difference between a virtual meeting and one that happens face to face.
So let's say I am a partner of a law firm, and we're seeing this a lot in every industry. So your business was bought out. You have the relationships, you have a great book of business, but you realize you don't want to be affiliated or part of this large corporation because it's different than when you were a smaller corporation. Speak on to what these partners are feeling and why they are leaving to start their own practice.
So what I'm seeing a lot of is a lot of the attorneys that are within larger practices, they're in big law. They are peeling away to start their own practices, their own individual practices, because a lot of them are feeling like they're on this never-ending hamster wheel. They're in a seat, they're warming the seat and billing, right? And what matters in their lives is not so much what it used to be in the past, meaning, did you help your client? Did you add value to your client? Did you solve a problem for your client? Instead, things have moved to this position of, well, did you bill for it? Whatever that may be, right? So we have moved away from what I call community serving law practices and attorneys to these large organizations that require a billable number for each head within the firm in order for you to maintain your spot. And there are no additional, clauses attached to that. Make sure you meet your billable hours that say, make sure you add value to your client, make sure you solve a problem for your client, make sure that you do the right thing. It doesn't say any of that. It says your billable hour expectation for the year is X. So because of that, individuals who value the practice of law and value client service and value, what we did as humans before just thinking about the bottom line, are taking that step back and deciding to go hang their own shingle. Now, the thing about the peel away of these attorneys is that if they don't have the relationships, that is where there's this level of friction, meaning that they don't own the client relationship. Clients that are attached to individuals, and typically that's the way that it is not so much that they're attached to the firm, it's usually they're attached to the person. And if they can go with the person, they will, as long as their work and their legal needs are going to be met when that individual leaves, they will go with the attorney, right? So what's happening is if the attorney who's peeling away does not have their relationship solidified to where they know that it's so sticky that no matter where they go, the client will go with them, they run the risk of departing and leaving a relationship behind because the relationship's attached to somebody else in the firm. That is why it is important to do business development through your career. Even as a young attorney, know your clients, build relationships with your clients, get their relationship to be really, really sticky so that they're attached to you, right? Because in the end, the client wants to go with who and where is most familiar to them. They don't want to start over with a new person. They don't. So they would prefer to go with you if they can. So business development 101 is build your relationships, make the relationship sticky so that the client is loyal to you no matter what. An attorney that has that type of impact and connection with their clients is the most valuable attorney that you have. Because of that, the client relationship stays and goes with that attorney, and so does the revenue that's attached to it. So that's the advice that I give my younger attorneys. And it's the question I ask when a more seasoned attorney starts talking about peeling away.
You mentioned sticky a lot. What have you seen attorneys do to become more sticky with their clients?
The tactics and strategies that have been used are every quarter, for example, I have attorneys who make it a point to have access to the inbox, meaning being in the inbox of their client, even if there's no client matter happening. Being present, showing up in the inbox when it has nothing to do with a billable hour, building the relationship beyond the matter that you're working with, and the client service that happens even after the matter has closed. So when a matter has closed, one very valuable thing that an attorney can do is, yes, for sure, your client needs to be reassured that you are there in the event that they need something else, that you can debrief, that you offer yourself to the client at no extra charge just to seal the deal and to end that matter off in a very pleasant way. So that will solidify that relationship, give it another layer, another hard shell that allows it to go, away over time. And then you can always go back because it's so solid. It's so sticky, right? That client's not going to want to depart. And then if you're following up, with the kind of a cadence that you've set for yourself for how often you're going to reach out to your client, then that client always feels that you're only a phone call away, you're on an email away, and they can always call you to get, perhaps a phone call for a bit of advice that's not billable. And I mentioned not billable here intentionally as well, because that's another way to build relationships. Somehow attorneys, and we all know how they did this, they've gotten this reputation that, they bill for every second for every single thing. If you can do the exact opposite of that, you stand out from the rest. And clients value that. If you can spare a half an hour conversation to talk through your client on something that you're not charging for, because chances are you're going to make it up on the back end anyway, right? So figure out how you make that happen and be of service to the client. In doing that, you can't really break that relationship because it's so strong. And to take things a step further, the opposing party that you're working with, depending on the nature of that transaction, at a minimum, advice is reach out to the opposing counsel and tell them thank you. Even if things did not go as you wanted them to go, they didn't go picture perfect, maintain that relationship. You now have another person that you know who can send referrals to you. You don't have to be enemies at the end of a matter, no matter how conscientious that matter was. It does not matter. That's a new person that you can now add to your list of people that you know that can become a referral source. Get to know that person, get to know what they do. Offer to be a referral source for them, because you just never know where your next matter will come from. And sometimes it can come from the opposing counsel that you were up against. I have seen attorneys who've had like a really brutal matter that they were working on. Perhaps it could be a litigation matter. And at the end, there's a handshake between the counsels and then referrals that says, that I went through a really, really hard trial or, representation with this attorney, but they were pretty cool to work with. And we shook hands at the end. If you can walk away with that, you've now solidified your relationship with your existing client. And now you now have another attorney who's going to be out there, referring work to you and saying good things about you. So there are a lot of little tricks that are sitting right there, little low-hanging fruits that you can use to develop your practice. You just have to look around and be aware and just know what they are beforehand so that you can draw upon them in the moment that you're in.
I was watching a video and it was about a divorce attorney. And they said, there's somebody else in the city. They're even better than me. And guess what? I love working with them because we can get the transaction done in 2 hours versus spending months or years trying to litigate something. And guess what? That's great for their client. And also word gets around fast that you can take complicated matters at a decent clip. And you can still charge a above average rate. And it's the goal is, like you said, to win-win for everybody, not just get some consistent billable hours. And I also add on top of that, when you sit with your client on non-billable time, that's the time where they'll actually tell you more problems that your firm can solve.
Exactly, because their guards are down. They're not being built.
Yes.
So they feel like they're in a safe space and they'll start telling you all kinds of things. And it's also an opportunity for you to gather more information about them. So the more information you know about them that you can then load into your CRM and build out a profile for your clients, guess what? You start knowing when birthdays are, anniversaries are. And when you start making contact for those times, that changes the entire game. There was one client that is so dear and near to me who's been my client for many years. And he told me his anniversary, I think like the second year that I was working with him. Yeah. And then the following year, I called him and I said, happy anniversary. And he had forgotten it was his anniversary. And he was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for calling me. I had forgotten. I remembered and then I forgot. So because of that one telephone call, like that relationship is so solid that now we're no longer just working together. We're friends beyond working together.
Yeah. So that's so awesome. I like it. Now, let's say somebody has been working for 10 years. They're an attorney, great billables, excellent, proficient in what they do, but they really want to become on the partnership track. How should they begin to nurture those relationships with clients? Get those sticky things like I'm young and I'm new. How do I start on square one?
Well, I got to tell you this, you got to take one further step back. You need to nurture the relationships with your senior partners within your firm first. That's where the relationship starts, because you will not get nominated for partnership unless the internal team loves you first. So before you start even getting to that outside step of like figuring out what you need to do, with the clients, that's important. But if you're able to establish your relationships and use business development tools in-house with the partners, with support staff, so that you have a unit around you that's going to support you and protect you as well, right? And stand in the gaps for you, because we are all human. We're going to have gaps sometimes. That is the first piece. When you have that solid piece there, you're off to the races. The next part is making it a point to be involved in a relationship and connections with the clients, direct connections. In the beginning, you will not always get that opportunity. However, when you can, take those opportunities. If you are seeing that perhaps the partner that you're working with is not taking you on, meetings or virtual calls, you can politely ask to be included. There's a way and there's a time and there is a place for it, right? And when you're working on a matter and you're being copied on an email to a client consistently, but you've never met them in person, you can stand on that and say, hey, partner, I really love working with this client, and I believe it will be helpful to build a relationship and let it be more solid if I have an opportunity to meet them. Would you mind introducing me to them or taking me to a coffee meeting with them? Like, is that okay to do that? Because then that's a non-threatening ask to the partner, so that the partner doesn't feel like, you're overstepping. But at the same time, you're, spreading your wings and allowing yourself the opportunity to be more than a billable unit to the client, but instead as a resource and an actual human face and person that they can connect with. You know, there is a time and place, like I said, for it. And there has been this, ongoing trend or style where attorneys have felt like they're the only ones that should be in contact or building FaceTime with the client. But the junior level attorneys need that FaceTime, not only for their own development, but also for the practice. Because if you're a senior attorney, you're going to one day retire, you're going to one day not be there, or, for whatever reason, you're not available. You have to allow somebody else to also be involved in the relationship. People are going to naturally gravitate to who they like best, no matter what you say, right? Like that's just the way that it is. But just think about it. It just looks and feels a whole lot better when there are multiple individuals that humanly exist on your matter, as opposed to just this one partner and what seems to be little minions that the partner sends work to. So, like I said, it's first that relationship with the partner, your lead partner, as well as the other individuals in your office, in your space that make up the support team as well. And then building out the relationships with the clients in that way by, appropriately requesting to be introduced or included.
I love it. So let's transition. So let's talk about your business, because this is Practice Prosperity. We love talking to practice owners and different things that come up when you run a business. So let's start off with, why did you get into this business? Business is hard. There's a lot of things you have to deal with. Why put up with all these things?
I've been in this space for 2 decades already. And the first 15-ish years of working with attorneys and law practices those years were spent in-house, working in different law practices internationally and nationally. And I learned a lot and moved up the corporate ladder relatively quickly. However, as my career matured and I learned more and more about law firms, attorneys, business development as it relates to lawyers and how law practices are marketed and developed, I realized that being an outside resource brings a level of value that an individual in my capacity almost cannot reach. And the reason why I say that is, inside of a law practice and inside of any business where, the company has grown, whether it's doubled in size, quadrupled in size, whatever that is, there are some spoken and unspoken politics that exist. There are hunches that people have. There are rooms where people are walking on eggshells, and there are certain things that internal to the firm you would not dare say or talk about or try to move or push forward. Whereas as an outside contractor, as an outside vendor who's supporting an existing team or an existing resource, or it could be unestablished as well, coming into those organizations is where I felt the most value was being added from the outside. I witnessed as being internal to the firm where I had been, trying to push initiatives forward within law practices that I was in, and I couldn't get anything to move. I couldn't get things over the hump. There were business plans and all types of plans that were written and were sitting in corners collecting dust. But the minute that I brought an outside expert in, everything that expert said became the gospel. I quickly realized that I could help attorneys and other individuals who were in my exact capacity that I was in internally to get stuff done, to move stuff forward, to develop the practice simply by being able to call on somebody like me. So I took that very brave step to move to be outside of a practice when I realized that I could bring more value that way. Because yes, of course, I can be within a law practice and I can, be within the business development function. But I was more interested in bringing a higher level of value, and being outside of a law practice allows me to do that in a way that I can't do it internally for the individuals that I serve.
Yeah, I like to echo that. That's been my experience working internally within the company. Those who they pay, the outside organizations, like you said, they adopt it as the gospel. And I've taken on the mantra, if they wanted my opinion, they would actually pay for it.
Yes.
Even though they were paying me a salary. It's a
Mhm.
strange thing.
Strange thing.
But because you're a business owner, you have to do things like networking events. How do you evaluate networking, especially since you have a specialty in business development? How do you evaluate networking events for yourself to grow your practice?
For me, in the networking spaces that I network, um, I look for where there is a level of partnership, where there is a level of um, I'm doing things to help other business owners, and other business owners are doing things to help me and my business. When I first opened this business, I went to all of the known spots that I felt attorneys would be, as well as firm administrators or anybody who would be able to understand the value of business development for law firms and understand legal marketing, and use those opportunities to build relationships. And those opportunities created business. However, in being intentional and being in spaces where there is accountability, where networking is the reason why we're here, I looked for where would I get the most, bang for my buck. And I started to look at professional organizations to see where are more of the types of clients that I want centered, like where are they? So I looked at organizations like Provisors, being an environment where there are a ton of attorneys that make up that networking space. And then looked at BNI because I felt like there are attorneys there as well as a lot of other businesses that touch attorneys that would then allow referrals to happen, not only to me, but me to them.
Mhm.
And I'll add that the accountability that's attached to networking organizations is another thing that I look for, because I feel like when there's accountability and there are requirements to attend meetings and to send referrals, that's where more of the success and return comes from, simply because people have, you know, amounts, quotas that they have to meet. And in order for them to maintain their status, they have to meet these quotas, and these numbers by default just benefits everybody who's around them.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in be around people who are taking care of business.
Mm-hmm.
Just, You can do other things for a social setting, like I do sports and hobbies like that. But there's another area where people who are just out there getting it and getting things done. I think that's
Yeah.
really important. Now, before you go to these networking events, do you have like a prep strategy that you do, like who's attending, all those different things? Is there like some game plan that you create before you even show up to the event?
Yes, absolutely. There is. And it's the exact same game plan that I give my attorneys who are attending an event or a conference. The attendee list is golden.
Hmm.
We take the attendee list and we unpack the attendee list and we pick out how many people, like all of the people, and how many of them we want to meet at that networking event that we're going to. Because what is the point in going to a networking event if you really don't even have a strategy or a plan? So we go with looking at who's on the attendee list, marking off who, checking off all the individuals you want to meet, and specifically writing down the objective of that meeting. Like, what are you trying to achieve when you touch, you know, that point? Like when you make that contact, what do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about, what is happening with them? Then you can take it a step further by looking at that individual's Facebook page, LinkedIn page, of course, depending on what industry you're in, looking at their website, seeing if there's something happening in their business. Because on the receiving end, when somebody walks up to me and says, "Oh, I see that you're offering that workshop that you have coming up," I know that they're paying attention to me. And now we have a starting point for where we're going to start talking. And if I've done my homework, I now know what I'm going to dovetail into after that mention, if that's me approaching that prospect. So there's a bit of homework that goes into figuring all of that out before we attend an event, because I feel like if you show up there, and of course some cases you can't avoid it because maybe the person was not on the attendee list, but you needed to meet them. If you can do that homework beforehand, you will definitely have way more value that comes out at the end from attending that, instead of just another networking event that you went to.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I'm going to spill the beans. People aren't going to say it. Going to these association events, the focus, the dirty little secret is CEs is not the focus of that event. Yes, get the knowledge, gain all those things, but it's the people that are at the event. That's
Correct.
the value of the event class. That's why you pay that premium, is for the people there, not necessarily the learning, because you can do the learning virtually for a
Hmm.
tenth of the price. So I
Yes.
think that's really important. I like that.
Yes.
So
Hmm.
now, how do you say this? As business owners, we do have to plan for taxes, right? And every business owner does this differently. For yourself, how do you plan for taxes throughout the year?
So I have a very strategic tax accountant that I work with. And since the start of Strategy Academy, since day one, we opened bank accounts, operating bank accounts for the agency. However, we also opened a bank account for taxes.
Mm.
And for every single revenue transaction that comes through the door, the tax estimation is taken away from that and put into the tax account. That account is sitting there for tax payments. We know that taxes are coming. It's coming. Like there's no if or maybes. Like we know that's coming. And we have made this policy that we are not going to be caught in a situation where, oh, we didn't remember the taxes, or oh, we have a tax bill, or oh, how are we going to pay the tax bill? Right. It just puts you and your business and your accountant in a bad space. So since day one, this accountant has, called me on a monthly basis and gone through all the revenue transactions and double checked that we did hold back sufficient amount of revenue to meet the tax expectation when the tax bill comes due. So that has been our strategy, and it has worked very well.
I think it's so powerful to have money put aside. And I know when you look at that account, it's like, that's a lot of money. do you know what I can do with that money? I reinvest in the business or take it and go on vacation, either way. But
Hmm.
I think it's wise that you say, yeah, that's money there, but it's not mine anymore. That's
Hmm.
Uncle Sam's.
Correct.
And I would rather have that money there for Uncle Sam than to owe Uncle Sam. I think that's
Hmm.
big for a lot of people. You pay the taxes, we have enough for distribution. What's left over is, we call it owner's equity, or what we reinvest back into the business. How do
Hmm.
you think about reinvesting that money back into the business? Like, what are some of the things you spend on to keep that engine going, like keep on pushing the flywheel?
So one of the things that we invest in on our side is the actual business development. We're a business development agency and we invest in business development. So we would spend, after we've met all of our obligations, we would look at what's left over and look at relationships that we need to develop further and look at what it would cost us to develop those relationships further. In some instances, it meant that we would be a sponsor of an organization where a lot of the people that we're trying to reach are a part of. So those are no brainers, right? Like, you need to be in that room, in those rooms, and attend those events because that's where you're going to go and generate more business. So those were the types of things that we, knew we had like a wish list of what we knew we wanted to do, but we couldn't do because we didn't have revenue or we needed to wait a couple of months to, build up those funds. And then when it got to a certain amount, we would go for it. Being a part of organizations is one, being a sponsor of events or taking more people out to dinner, to lunch, instead of, finding some other frivolous way of spending those funds, we would add that back into the flow, so that we're able to keep the business rolling by developing relationships and, building out the businesses in general, just and marketing again. So while I am not a big supporter of like throwing tons of money into paid marketing, when you start, you do get to a point where you're like, okay, well, this is working. Let's put some gasoline on that and let that explode some. So when you find yourself that where you've used organic to a point where you now know it works and you can, ignite the flame to be bigger, that's when it's time to do paid marketing. Paid marketing is not something that we recommend that you do out of the gate. The organic marketing is the marketing that actually sticks around the longest. And it actually feels a lot more genuine to the individuals that you're marketing to. And then when you put gasoline on it after you've, built up your authority and built up your relevance in the space, it doesn't feel so unnatural to individuals who already know you. So we reserve the use of paid advertising for those purposes, but we try to keep organic going no matter what.
I'm a big believer in a wish list. I keep a running list of items I need to buy, whether that's equipment,
Mhm.
technology, nice hats for the business,
Yep.
and prioritize those at any given point. And like you said, when there's extra, that's the time when you buy that item, double down on that thing, and you
Mhm.
just kind of keep that thing going. But I think one of the best things you said is I keep a budget for my lifestyle. That way I know the fixed payment that's coming out every month. So that way I can do an adequate reinvestment. I think that was a beautiful way you explained it.
Yeah. And I'll add this too. If you're in the business and there is not a return that helps you to maintain where you're at and the lifestyle that you want, then what are you really doing? Right? You have to have that. Otherwise you're just kind of doing a hobby that is just really expensive.
I believe that. I think one of the things I recommend folks wanting to go into business is ask people who are doing well in this business, what can they expect to earn? And once you hear that number, people who've been doing it for 10, 20 years, does that, like you said, fit the lifestyle that you want?
Mhm.
And you may have to make some adjustments, but at least you know going into it versus somebody on social media saying you can make, multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars in the next 5 months.
Yeah,
That's not a thing in the real world.
it is not. It absolutely is not.
Last question I ask everybody is, how do you define prosperity for your business? What does that feel, sound like to you?
So I touched on it a little bit previously, but for me, prosperity is being able to hand this business off to my kids and to the next generation. Now, if my kids decide, Mom, I really don't want to do business development for attorneys, that doesn't mean that it ends there. I do have nieces who I believe at least one of them will want to do some type of business development or some type of thing in the legal space just because of their personalities, right? So I believe that it will be passed along. But being having prosperity for me is also attached to wealth. And wealth for me is not just in the moment of having, it's being able to move things from one generation to the next while it holds its value. And then even after that, it can move further. So in families where what has been gained, earned, and grown, passing from one generation to the other, screams prosperity for me and attaches wealth as well for the next generation to come.
I do have to ask a follow up on that because people in this society think, okay, I'm gonna let my child do whatever they want to do, whatever their hearts desire. But most people are not going to find that thing that they're passionate with. So having a business that is in-house that they've grown up and experienced with, I think is so valuable for wealth creation. I
Mhm.
have to ask, how are you prepping your child for this opportunity that could be for them? Like, what are some of those things?
So, what I have done since the start of this business is involve both of my children in the business.
Mm.
One of the things that I do specifically with my daughter, who's the youngest, and she's still at home, my son's in college, is if I have met a challenge in the business, I ask her what she thinks I should do
Mm.
because she has a child's mind. And typically, a child's mind is way more creative than an adult's mind. And when I allow her to tell me what to do, and in a lot of cases, I do take what she's told me to do and I implement those things. She already feels that she's in the business and she's a part of the business. So, in telling her what I'm doing and then saying things back to her that I've done that she's told me, and then asking her questions and involving her, in reality, she's already in the business. She's already working in the business. It's just not a defined, you are working in the business situation that has happened. So when she's older, and also when my son returns, and I did the same thing before he went to college, and I still call him up now and say, hey, what do you think about this? They're already invested in the business. They're already locked into it. They already know what this business is about. They know what I do. They know who I serve, and they know the types of decisions that I need to make because I ask them for their input. So I believe that involving your children in your current happenings of your business, when you meet a challenge, asking them, having a brainstorm with your kids is great for the business, it's great for you, and it's also great for them because they feel like they're contributing. So when this business, expands and doubles and triples in size, they can proudly sit back, look at the business, and know that they added to the business. It wasn't just something that, their mom did when they were kids.
I love that because you make it fun. I hear the
Mhm.
story of, oh, I have to do this paperwork for the business, so I'm not fully being compensated. But there are some fun elements, being
Mhm.
creative, brainstorming, celebrations that
Mhm.
make the business more enticing. I'm glad that you shared that and that you're doing that with your kids.
Mhm. Yeah, very important to do that. Highly recommend it.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Antonio Berry. If somebody's listening to this and say my law practice growth has stalled out, I'm thinking about my partner now, and I'm thinking about stepping out, so I want to have some experience thought around me. How can they reach out to you?
Best place to look for us is on our website. It's strategyacademy.us. On our website, you will find a ton of information, a wealth of information, and also access to all of our social media channels that you want to get to. So I highly recommend that you check us out there. And then from there, you can funnel through to whatever channel best suits your needs.
Awesome. This has been a pleasure. You shared so much. You didn't hold back at all. So I definitely appreciated that. And thank you for joining us on Practice Prosperity.
Yes, and you're welcome. And thank you so much for having me.
Feeling the pressure? You're not alone. I'm Randall Avery with Diesel Wealth Management, and I specialize in simplifying wealth for those who are near retirement and business owners. We'll create a plan that fits your unique needs so you can actually enjoy the wealth that you built. We consider our firm results-driven with a touch of fun. Ready for clarity? Click the Learn More and schedule your free discovery call. Let's build the financial future together.
The more I know, the more money I can make.